As I went under the knife for emergency heart surgery, my wife of 8 years was boarding a plane with her secret lover. She'd planned this getaway weeks before, knowing I might not survive. Then came her cold text, "Watch until the end. Subscribe to the channel and write where you are watching from in the comments." I never thought I'd be telling this story. Even now, typing these words feels surreal, like I'm describing someone else's life. But this nightmare was mine. My name is Daniel, and this is the story of how my wife of 8 years betrayed me in the worst possible way, and how my brother, a man I'd barely spoken to in years, became my savior. Let me start by saying Megan and I seemed perfect on paper. We met in college, dated for 3 years, and got married in a beautiful ceremony by the lake where we had our first date. Our friends called us the dream couple. I was building my career as a financial analyst, and Megan was making waves in marketing. We bought a house in the suburbs, started planning for kids, and genuinely believed we'd grow old together. The first 5 years of our marriage were good, at least I thought they were. We had our arguments like any couple, but nothing major. Megan could be cold at times, a bit distant, but I chalked it up to her ambitious personality. She was always chasing the next big achievement, the next promotion, the next renovation for our house. In retrospect, maybe I should have seen the signs, the late nights at work, the business trips that seemed to increase in frequency, the way she would guard her phone. But I trusted her completely. That was my first mistake. My health problems started about 3 years ago. It began with occasional chest pains that I dismissed as stress or heartburn. But when I nearly collapsed during a morning run, I finally went to see a doctor. After numerous tests, the diagnosis came back. I had a congenital heart defect that had gone undetected my whole life. The doctor explained I would need surgery, but it wasn't urgent. We could schedule it for later that year. Megan seemed supportive at first. She came to my appointments, asked questions, took notes. But I noticed something shift in her eyes when the doctor mentioned recovery would take months and I would need significant care afterward. Looking back, I think that's when she started making her plans. As the date for my surgery approached, Megan became increasingly busy with work. A major campaign she was managing required her attention, she said. I believed her, of course. Why wouldn't I? She was my wife, the person I trusted most in the world. 2 weeks before my scheduled surgery, the situation changed dramatically. During a routine checkup, my doctor discovered the condition had deteriorated rapidly. What was once a planned procedure became an emergency. I needed surgery within days or I risked heart failure. I called Megan from the hospital, my hands shaking as I explained what the doctor had told me. Her response seemed appropriate: concern, questions about timing, promises to be there. But there was something off in her voice, a detachment I couldn't quite place. I'll need to move some meetings around, she said. This big client pitch is next week and I'm leading it. Megan, this is life-threatening, I remember saying, a chill running through me at her priorities. I know, she said quickly. Of course I'll be there, I'm just saying I need to rearrange things. I felt guilty for doubting her. After all, her career was important too, and I'd always supported her ambitions. So I pushed aside my unease and focused on preparing for the surgery. The day before I was admitted to the hospital, Megan was distracted, constantly on her phone. She packed a bag which I assumed contained things she'd need while staying at the hospital with me. She kissed me goodbye that morning as I was being admitted, promising to return that evening after tying up loose ends at work. She never came back. The surgery was scheduled for 6 a.m. the next morning. By midnight, Megan hadn't returned my calls or texts. I convinced myself there was a reasonable explanation: a work emergency, a dead phone battery, terrible traffic. The nurse gave me a sedative to help me sleep, and my last thought before drifting off was worry, not for myself but for Megan. Was she okay? I woke to find not my wife but a nurse checking my vitals. It was 5 a.m. Has my wife called? I asked, my mouth dry with fear. The nurse shook her head. No one's called for you, Mr. Matthews. I tried Megan's phone again, straight to voicemail. I texted her, surgery in an hour, please come, I'm scared. No response. The hospital needed an emergency contact for the surgery. With trembling fingers, I called the only person I could think of, my brother Alex. Alex and I had a complicated relationship. We were close growing up, but drifted apart in adulthood. He never liked Megan, said she was cold and calculating. I defended her fiercely, and it created a rift between us. We hadn't spoken more than a few words at family gatherings for nearly 2 years. He answered on the second ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Daniel, it's 5 in the morning. What's wrong?" I explained the situation as calmly as I could, though my voice cracked when I admitted Megan was missing. There was a pause, and I braced myself for an "I told you so." Instead, Alex said, "Text me the hospital address. I'm on my way." 30 minutes later, as they were prepping me for surgery, Alex burst into the room, looking disheveled but determined. He squeezed my hand. "I'm here, little brother. I've got you." I don't remember much after that. The anesthesia took hold, and I slipped into unconsciousness with the cold fear of both the surgery and my wife's unexplained absence wrapped around my heart. The surgery lasted 12 hours. It was far more complicated than anticipated, the surgeon told Alex afterward. They nearly lost me twice on the table. Had the surgery been delayed even by a day, I likely wouldn't have survived. I spent 3 days in intensive care, drifting in and out of consciousness. Each time I woke, it was Alex's face I saw, not Megan's. Each time I would ask for her, and each time Alex would say, "She's not here yet, but I'm sure she's coming." But I could see it in his eyes, something was very wrong. On the 4th day, when I was more lucid and moved to a regular room, Alex sat down beside my bed with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of rage and pity. "Daniel," he said quietly, "there's something I need to show you." He hesitated, then handed me his phone. On the screen was Megan's Instagram account. The most recent post, dated 2 days after my surgery, showed her on a beach, cocktail in hand, sun setting behind her. The caption read, "Sometimes you just need to drop everything and reset. New beginnings, no regrets." I stared at the image, unable to process what I was seeing. My wife smiling on a tropical beach while I fought for my life on an operating table. "There's more," Alex said grimly, taking the phone and scrolling to another image. This one knocked the breath from my lungs. Megan again, but this time she wasn't alone. A man's arm was wrapped around her waist, his face pressed against her neck. I recognized him immediately, Jason Fields, her coworker, the one she'd always described as ambitious but arrogant. The caption, "Finally following my heart, life's too short for compromise." The betrayal was so complete, so breathtaking, that I couldn't even cry. I just lay there, the surgical pain in my chest nothing compared to the shattering of my heart. "When?" I managed to ask. Alex hesitated. "I did some digging, called some mutual friends. Apparently they've been seeing each other for at least 6 months. And Daniel? She booked those resort tickets 3 weeks ago, before your surgery date was even moved up." The implications hit me like a physical blow. Megan had planned to be gone during my original surgery date as well. This wasn't a spontaneous decision, it was premeditated abandonment. I closed my eyes, memories flooding back. The late nights, the business trips, the way she'd pull away when I tried to hold her. It had all been leading to this moment, this ultimate betrayal. Has she called, asked about me at all? I asked, already knowing the answer. Alex's silence told me everything. The next few days passed in a blur of pain, physical and emotional. Alex stayed with me constantly, sleeping in the uncomfortable hospital chair, advocating with doctors, managing my care. He called our parents, who lived overseas, keeping them updated so they wouldn't worry too much. He brought me proper food when I complained about the hospital meals. He even made me laugh sometimes with stories from our childhood. A week after my surgery, my phone lit up with a text from Megan. "Hey, heard you made it through surgery. That's great. I need some time to figure things out. Don't contact me for a while." No questions about my condition, no explanation for her absence. No acknowledgement of her betrayal, just cold distance and a demand for space while she vacationed with her lover. I showed the message to Alex, who read it with a clenched jaw. "She's unbelievable," he muttered. "Absolutely unbelievable." The next morning, as Alex was helping me take a slow, painful walk down the hospital corridor, he broached a subject I hadn't even considered. "You can't go back to that house," he said firmly. "Not with her." The thought hadn't even occurred to me. In my mind, the house was still my home, our home, but Alex was right. I couldn't return to the place I'd shared with Megan, filled with photographs and memories of our life together. A life that had been a lie. "You'll stay with me when you're discharged," Alex continued. "I've already started setting up my spare room. It's not fancy, but it's quiet and comfortable." I was too exhausted, too broken to argue. I just nodded. 2 days later, Alex was on his phone in the corner of my hospital room, his voice low but intense. When he finished the call, his expression was grim satisfaction. "What was that about?" I asked. "I hired you a lawyer," he said. "The best divorce attorney in the city. She's going to meet us here tomorrow." Divorce, I repeated, the word feeling foreign in my mouth despite its obvious necessity. Unless you want to stay married to someone who abandoned you during life-threatening surgery to bang her coworker on a beach. Alex's bluntness was jarring but necessary. I shook my head slowly. No, of course not. The divorce attorney, Patricia Winters, was a formidable woman in her 50s with shrewd eyes and zero sentimentality. She visited me in the hospital, took detailed notes, and laid out a strategy that made even Alex raise his eyebrows in admiration. Abandonment during a medical emergency is not looked upon kindly by the courts, she explained. Add to that evidence of infidelity and the length of your marriage, we're in a strong position. I'm going to make sure she doesn't take you for a penny more than she deserves, which frankly isn't much. I was discharged from the hospital 2 weeks after surgery. Alex brought me clean clothes, helped me dress, and wheeled me out to his car. As we drove away from the hospital, a strange feeling washed over me. I was heading not to my home of 8 years, but to my brother's apartment. I was starting over, in the most unexpected and painful way possible. Alex's apartment was smaller than my house but warm and welcoming. He'd clearly cleaned thoroughly before bringing me home and had stocked the fridge with my favorite foods. The spare room had a new mattress, fresh bedding, and a small TV installed on the wall. I know it's not much, he said, uncharacteristically self-conscious. It's perfect, I told him, meaning it. Thank you, Alex, for everything. He waved away my gratitude. That's what brothers do. That night, as I lay in the unfamiliar bed staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzed. It was an email from Megan. I've retained a lawyer. I want the house and half of our savings. This doesn't need to get ugly. I forwarded it to Patricia without responding and then turned off my phone. For the first time since my diagnosis, I wept, not for the loss of Megan, but for the loss of the life I thought we had, the future I'd planned, the trust I'd given so completely. Alex found me like that, curled on my side, tears soaking the pillow. Without a word, he sat on the edge of the bed and placed his hand on my shoulder, a silent presence of support that meant more than any words could have. The weeks that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Physical recovery from open-heart surgery is brutal, constant pain, limited mobility, exhaustion that seeps into your bones. Add to that the emotional trauma of betrayal and divorce proceedings, and there were days I wasn't sure I would make it. But Alex never wavered. He took time off work to help me through the worst of it. He drove me to medical appointments, made sure I took my medications, and even helped me shower when I was too weak to stand alone. At night, when nightmares of Megan and Jason jolted me awake, he would make tea and sit with me until I could sleep again. Meanwhile, Patricia was fighting fiercely on my behalf. It turned out Megan's position wasn't as strong as she thought. Abandonment during a medical emergency, evidence of long-term infidelity, and the fact that I'd paid for 70% of our house meant the courts were not sympathetic to her demands. About a month after my discharge, Megan showed up at Alex's apartment unannounced. I was alone, Alex having returned to work now that I could manage basic self-care. The doorbell rang, and when I opened it, there she stood, tanned from her resort stay, designer sunglasses pushed up on her head, looking as beautiful and cold as ever. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I'd imagined this confrontation countless times, rehearsed cutting remarks and accusations. But now, face to face with the woman who had broken me, I felt nothing but a dull ache. "You look terrible," she said finally. "Nearly dying will do that to you," I replied, my voice steady. She sighed, as if my near-death experience was an inconvenience to her. "Can I come in? We need to talk about the divorce." I hesitated, then stepped back to let her in. I wasn't going to have this conversation in a hallway. Megan walked into Alex's apartment, her eyes taking in the modest furnishings with barely disguised disdain. "So this is where you're living now," she said, making it sound like I'd moved into a cardboard box. "What do you want, Megan?" She turned to face me, her expression suddenly businesslike. "Your lawyer is being unreasonable. I put years into our marriage, into that house. I deserve my fair share." "Fair share?" I repeated, incredulity rising in my voice. "You abandoned me during life-saving surgery to go fuck your coworker on a beach, and you want to talk about what's fair?" She flinched at my language but quickly recovered. "That's not what happened. I had a breakdown, the stress of your illness, the pressure at work. I needed space. Jason was just a mistake. A reaction to everything falling apart. A mistake you planned weeks in advance," I pointed out. A mistake you're still making, according to your Instagram. Her eyes narrowed. You're monitoring my social media? I don't have to. Our friends do it for me. They were quite interested to see you moving on so quickly while I was still hooked up to machines keeping me alive. She had the grace to look slightly ashamed, but it didn't last. Look, Daniel, I'm sorry about the timing. I truly am, but our marriage was over long before your surgery. We both know that. No, Megan, we don't both know that. I thought we were happy. I thought we had a future. I thought I had a wife who would actually be there when I needed her most. She sighed dramatically. This is why I couldn't stay. The guilt trips, the neediness, your health issues were taking over our lives. I couldn't be the person you needed. I'm not built for that. Her words struck me like physical blows. This was the woman I'd loved for over a decade, the person I'd planned to have children with, grow old with. And in her eyes, my illness, something completely beyond my control, was an inconvenience that justified abandonment. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out. Now, any further communication can go through our lawyers. She looked surprised, then angry. You're making a mistake, Daniel. I was prepared to be reasonable, but if you want to play hardball, goodbye, Megan. She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked to the door. With her hand on the knob, she paused and looked back. I did love you, you know, just not enough to become a nurse for the rest of my life. After she left, I sat on the couch, shaking. Not from weakness or pain, but from anger, pure, cleansing anger that burned away the last of my grief for our marriage. In that moment, I realized I didn't want her back. I didn't miss her. I missed who I thought she was, a person who had never actually existed. When Alex came home and found me on the couch, staring into space, he immediately knew something had happened. I told him about Megan's visit, her justifications, her cruel words. He listened without interrupting, then said, She did you a favor, you know? A favor? I asked incredulously. She showed you who she really is before you spent the rest of your life with her, before you had kids with her. Imagine if this had happened when you had children to consider. He was right, of course. As painful as this betrayal was, it had freed me from a marriage to someone who could abandon me at my most vulnerable. Someone who saw my illness as an imposition rather than something we would face together. The divorce proceedings continued. Megan fought hard for the house and a significant portion of our savings, but Patricia was better. In the end, we sold the house and split the proceeds, with me getting a larger share due to my greater financial contribution. Our savings were divided evenly and we went our separate ways. Throughout it all, Alex remained my rock. He opened his home to me indefinitely, helped me find a new therapist, and even accompanied me to divorce court when the day came to finalize everything. When the judge pronounced us legally divorced, he squeezed my shoulder in silent support. Recovery, both physical and emotional, was a slow process. There were setbacks, infections that required further hospitalization, panic attacks when memories of Megan's betrayal would overwhelm me, days when the pain and exhaustion made me wonder if surviving was worth it. But gradually, incrementally, things improved. My body healed. My heart, both physically and metaphorically, grew stronger. I returned to work part-time, then full-time. I started rebuilding my life piece by piece. 6 months after my surgery, I received a text from Jason, of all people. I'm sorry for what happened. Megan told me you were supportive of her moving on, that you had discussed separation before your health issues. I believed her. I should have questioned it more. For what it's worth, it didn't last. She's already moved on to someone else at the company. I showed the message to Alex, who snorted derisively. What did you expect? She's incapable of loyalty, he said. Are you going to respond? I thought about it, then simply typed, Thank you for the apology. I hope you find someone who deserves your trust. I didn't hear from Megan again directly, though mutual friends occasionally mentioned her. She'd been promoted, she'd moved to a luxury apartment downtown, she was dating a wealthy client from her firm. Each update affected me less and less until they were just facts about a stranger, not wounds that reopened with each mention. A year after my surgery, I was finally well enough to move out of Alex's apartment. I'd saved enough for a down payment on a small but modern condo across town. On moving day, as we carried the last box into my new place, I turned to my brother. I don't know how to thank you, I said. You saved my life in every way possible. Alex, never comfortable with emotional moments, shrugged. You'd have done the same for me. I would, I agreed, and I will if you ever need me. But that doesn't change what you did. When everyone else abandoned me, my wife, some friends who took her side, you were there. I'll never forget that. He looked embarrassed but pleased. That's what family is supposed to do, Daniel. The real kind, not the kind that walks away when things get tough. We ordered pizza and christened my new place with beer, my first since the surgery, doctor approved. As we sat on boxes, eating and laughing about old times, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: hope. Not just for survival, but for a good life, a happy future. Megan had left me at my most vulnerable, choosing selfish pleasure over the vows she'd made, but in doing so, she'd inadvertently given me a precious gift: the truth. About her, about our marriage, about the kind of love that actually matters. The kind that shows up when it's hardest, not just when it's convenient. My brother had demonstrated that kind of love. He'd stepped up when I had no one else, sacrificed his time and comfort to help me rebuild from nothing. In losing a wife, I'd regained a brother. And somehow that felt like coming out ahead. Today, 2 years after my surgery, my life looks nothing like I'd planned. I'm divorced, living alone, with a scar down my chest that still pulls when the weather changes. But I'm alive. I'm healthy. I have a relationship with my brother that's stronger than ever. I'm dating again, cautiously but optimistically. And most importantly, I know now what true loyalty looks like. I know the difference between those who love the idea of you and those who love you enough to stay when the idea crumbles under the weight of reality. Megan chose to leave when I needed her most. My brother chose to stay. In the end, it's our choices that define us. And while I still have days when the betrayal stings, I'm grateful for the clarity it brought, the understanding that sometimes losing someone is not a loss at all, but a rescue from a life built on illusions. My heart was broken, literally and figuratively, but both have healed stronger than before, and for that unexpected strength I am finally, genuinely grateful.